Hello and welcome to Stable and Scale, one of the places where you can learn and share wisdom. I am Lakshman. Today we are gonna see how to power up your workflows using Python, Azure Function, and deploying into a container apps. There was lot of segments going up on Python, Azure Functions, then container apps deployment and stuff. Why? I'm gonna scale up and scale down the jobs based on the storage queue. So there was lot of elements in it. So without wasting any time, let's get started. As we have need to deploy our Python job to the container apps, which I have cleaned up with the 4 steps. First step is creating a Python job with Azure function on only on with queue trigger. Next, dockerizing that application and push to the container registry. Third one, containers the app and deploy to the job. Fourth one, we will scale up via queue trigger. The things we need to create is, first, it's a storage account, we need it. Number 2, we need a container registry to hold our Docker image. Number 3, container apps where it is we need to deploy on Azure. On regards to container registry, you can have Docker Hub if you have, or else you can use Azure Container Registry, which I am going to use Azure Container Registry. So either where it will work out. Okay, so the container apps is on Azure. So let's proceed with the step 1, step 2, step 3 and step 4 process. Simple. So let's get in. On the first step, which we have to do, create a Python job and with Azure function with queue store trigger. For that we need a storage account. First let's create a storage account with the name of pyazfnrg storage account. So let's create the storage account. Meanwhile, I will push the code also on the Git repository where I will paste this azfn container job app. So it's public, I'm just creating it for YouTube video. I'm just adding a readme file and adding a Python git ignore and enabling this stuff and creating it. So on here, same fnstrg with Central India standard with local, and let's review and create. All other necessaries remain same, so just gonna go with the default one and we just gonna create it, and my repository also got ready. So what I am gonna do is I'm gonna copy it and git clone. It's cloned, so let's move into this repo. I'm using a Visual Studio Code here. If you want to have any other options or any other IDE, you can prefer go with it. So what I'm gonna do is I already have a extension called Azure Functions. That so this is the Azure function extension which helps me create a project. Azure function create a project. So here I'm gonna create a Python job with MV1. So as if you are starting with a beginner, MV1 is a better option because MV2 comes up with blueprints and stuff. Go with MV1. And for interpreter Python, I have a Python 8 in my system, so just gonna click it And for now I'm just gonna skip and get add all the files which necessary. Local dot settings, requirement.ts files, and setting up the virtual environment and everything. So meanwhile, let's go here. My storage account was got created. Let's go to the access keys, copy the secondary. Usually if you are developing anything on respective to cloud on stuff, use the secondary. So I'm just gonna paste it here, and these are default files. I'm gonna commit it, default files, and I will push it. So now what we have to create, a Azure function. You have to create a function, right, which required to be storage queue, Azure storage queue, and the queue trigger is queue job trigger. And I'm gonna use this as storage account key. The key is actually what I need to do is job queue. Now this will start triggering my information. What I am gonna do is I'm just not gonna do anything on function. If you have anything which is required to implement or do some kind of jobs, you can add your logic here. You can add your code here. So I'm just gonna go with the plain empty. I'm just gonna send a message and it's gonna make a message is going to process. So, and by default, as you can have a option for setting up the function timeouts in the host or JSON file concurrency. You can have another option here. It's like function timeout. You can set how much the timeout which is required. By default it's 5 minutes. As we are containerizing the application, we can max go up to 1 hour. But kindly analyze how much time it takes to run the process, then set it the function timeout accordingly. For now I am not gonna set any function timeout because this is a very simple job. By default it's 5 minutes it will take to run the job. 5 minutes sufficient for this one. So now as I added a function, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add and added queue trigger job. Now I committed it and I pushed the code. Now I will run this. So this is the function. So what I am gonna do is just go to function, copy this queue. Let me open up the queue here. I need to create a queue, right, for me to send a message. What I'm gonna send a message. Let me allow it. No, it's get starting actually. So you can see here all my codes are showing up here. You can even set up a CI/CD pipeline here also. Let's pause for a minute, and once the app is up, we will resume. As the application is now currently running, let's push a message and check whether it is actually working or not. So this is the test message, and I'm sending the message here. You can see my message is showing up here. Now it's disappeared. Let's go and check. You can see here there was a new message which showed up in the queue, and the message is actually this is the message. This is the test message. This is the message which shows up here. So now currently it works. Let's have one more variable called job queue name. Instead of configuring here, let me push this function name. So whenever I need, I can just change the job name, right? Let's copy it and paste it here, and when I save it, it will stop and it won't it will start reinitiating the stuff. So now as I've changed the job name and the function name here, let me stop it and start again. So if you need to change the name or queue dynamically, this is the best option. We can just configure the environment variable here and paste it here. Simple. So let me have a message new. What I will say is I will send a message. The message, let it be there. Once it kick starts, then it will show up here. So let's wait. And meanwhile, what I'm gonna do is I need to prepare a Docker file, right? For the second step, I need to Dockerize the application and push it to the container apps. Now the message is already here, so let's go for the second one. Let's go. So for pushing the actual stuff, what we are doing is we are going a second step, Dockerizing the app. For that I need the container in registry. Let's meanwhile create container registry here. This is the container registry. Clean it up. Now you can see here. So meanwhile now the message is done and the message is showing up, which means we completed this first step of creating the Python job with Azure Function on queue trigger, which is done. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna font make it bold. Okay, so this is we are done. For the second step, we need to Dockerize the app and push to the container registry. So for that we need to create the container registry, which I am gonna use the same naming conversion, pyazfn app rg ACR, which is container registry with basic plan and networking and encryptions, those stuff. Let me leave it by default and I will create it. So let it get created. Meanwhile, let us stop this service and we have to Dockerize it, right? For Dockerizing, one of the main thing which need is the Docker file. So let's create a Docker file. I have a predefined template with me so that I can just copy paste. So let me explain. So this is a Docker image for Azure Function with Python 3.11 Slim, so which enables with Docker function and pre-write and pre-buffer for logging and beans purposes. Then I'm installing the requirement.txt file and setting up the environment variable and setting the information here. Then Python function work time is runtime, and I have two files here. One is job trigger, where I will be pushing this code inside the container, and the host.json file. why not pushing local? It will be on the environment variable where it will be accessing via environment variables and stuff. So this is the docker file. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna create the docker command. Docker commands. What docker commands usually is docker build -t tag. So you can easily see this is the docker file and this is the docker runtime where my black code it helps me out. Okay, so this is the docker file and this is the tag, and the docker file -f and -t. So what I know to do is I'm just gonna copy it and I'm just gonna paste it here where tag creates a tag and docker file builds a docker file. So it will take a few minutes for me to actually, I'm just gonna get these images, and once the build is done we will resume. Currently my image was build actually, so you can see my image here with Python ft job with the tag as latest because I didn't mention any tag over there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tag as latest where I need to change this URLs and stuff. What I'm gonna just go is this is the URL which is our container registry. I'm just gonna paste it and change it here. So once it is dockerized, I need to push this image to actual container registry where I need to enable the authentication and access the authentication stuff where it's gonna click. This is the admin portal. What I need to do is click it, clear here, docker login, and put the container registry stuff URL, then username, and use a secondary password by default, and it will connect to the container registry here. For if you are gonna connect with the container hub, you can use the same docker login, your container hub's URL, and you have to provide your username and password where you can start integrate. So once this is done, I'm just gonna copy it and I'm gonna push it here, tag it. Then what I will do is I will just copy and push to the cloud. So this is actually 1.65 GB of content which I need to push to the cloud. It will take a minimum few minutes. So once this pushed to the actual container hub, we will get back. Now the image is pushed actually to my ACR actually. So let's go and see whether the image is showing up here. In here you have to go to repositories. Here you can see the Python job file is there and with the tag of latest. So now with this we completed the second step, dockerizing the app and pushing that to the container registry. Third step, we need to create a container app and deploy to the job. So that's our third step. Let's go to the repository resource group here. Let's go and create our container app. Container apps. This is the container app which I'm talking about. Don't get confused. Container app job and container apps. Container app job is different and container app is different. So I need to select the respective repository. Then py-azfn hyphen container app, and I am just hosting it in central India. with the manifest folder, and this is the region which I'm gonna select. Next is I need to have, instead of quick start information, I am just gonna select the Azure container registry here, where I will select the registry, then the image, then the tag. If you need any override bash steps, you can just push it here. And this is the consumption based plan, and up to 4 core 8 GB memory. Currently I proceed with 0.5 core and 1 GB is sufficient for me to run, and I have to add all the environment variables which I added. Let's go to the local settings here. Let's copy and paste here. This is my Azure blob storage information. Next is container function app runtime, which is Python, and third one is job queue. Where is job queue? Is the job queue name here. Just gonna copy paste it here. These all are my variables. Actually, I'm just gonna next binding. For now I'm not gonna do any binding, any ingress, because it is actually a job. For that TCP and AP enabling is not required. I'm just gonna disable it. Tags is default. If you are creating, better have a created by, created for, and purpose, so that who asked it, who created it, what's the purpose, you can able to get it. For now I'm just excluding everything and checking the validation actually. So let's the validation getting run actually. Meanwhile, so you can also push this deployment via actually on the GitHub also. What you can do is you can just go to actions, publish the package, and deploy to package. You can have it Azure, you can type container apps. You can have multiple options over here. This is a Docker image, so I'm just can deploy to the Azure function app. It necessary not equated to Dockerize. So as this video is specifically for the container deployment, this option, and I will share you some pipelines, and it can be on upcoming videos how to deploy via pipeline. Okay, now let's create it. So everything is validated. It's going to the deployment pipe, deployment for template for the container app to get deployed actually. So let's pause for a minute, and once this deployment is completed, we will resume. So now my container app is what created. What it created is created my log analytics workspace, where all the logs related to container goes in, and the container apps environment and the container app. Now let's go to the resource actually. So this is all the resources. This is the environment which I'm talking, and this is the container app, and this is the log space. So if I go inside this container apps, and I can see that application is currently actually running. So you can see here with the logs and stuff, and it is the information. Go L props, go to revision and information, click this one, and you can just go and see how many replicas it is. Actually min and max is actually 1, because we not scaled it actually. And if you want to check the logs, you can just click here and you can go to log stream, and you can just check the logs over here, where you can see everything is getting connected. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate it, and let us push a message and whether it is capturing the messages or not. Okay, so let's test that one. Let me go to our view, Docker, then the storage account, then go to queues, our queue, create a message. This is the message for container app. So once I send a message, I can see here whether, let's check whether it is consumed. Let's wait and check whether that my message is actually getting consumed here. This is the Python container apps and the image is getting stuff. Let's wait. Let's pause for a minute and check whether the message is coming up or not. Now the message is showed up, so it was cleared here, and you can see that message is showing up here, and this is the message for container app. Let's send one more message here, container app update, and send a messages here, and let's see here whether it is getting consumed. I'm just clicking refresh when it's check whether the message is sent or not. No, the message is sent, is disappeared. You can see here. Let us start it. So you can see here the message. Or else what we can do is we can just go to logs and check for traces. One sec. As it was in the stop state, the error is not showed up here, so I will send a new message here. The message is from the container app. Let's check here, and now it is actually visible. Now let's refresh and check whether that message is showing up. It takes few seconds to get the message into our system for the one single options. Now as you can easily see, that message is actually getting consumed from our job. So which means it completes the third step, which I created a container apps and deployed the job to the actual stuff. Let's set up a scaling for our queue trigger. So for that you have to go to scale option here, then click edit and deploy, then select the container app which you want to check, cross check whether all the variables are correct, then go to scale. As this is minimum was 1, I'm just gonna 0, and max is actually I'm gonna set 5 actually at present. Then I need to add a scale rule. Scale rule is Azure queue, then I'm gonna use Azure queue here, then the queue name with the message of maximum 2 and with a secret. There will be some secret reference you have to point, and in which parameter you have to just check. If you go back to the container and you see, this is the connection string which we used here, so that it connects with our actual storage account for the triggering. So max length is 2. You can set max to till 5, because as it is a testing stuff, I'm just setting max 2, so which adds up the queue actually. So once it is done, once you added this, and even if you are adding a job of HTTP calls, you can set up HTTP call, TCP, and custom events also, custom like event hub, then service bus, Apache Kafka, those kind of stuff also. We will discuss how to scale container apps in upcoming videos. Okay, as for that. So now let's create it. It will create a new version of app deployment. So you can just, if that's the case, you can go here and revisions. You can see how many revisions has been actually happened and how many revisions is inactive and how many replicas actually is there. So you can see there was 2 replicas which is previously for testing which I created. Now it's only 1 replica is running at present. So now this is done. So you can see there was no replica should be running now. After a few minutes, this is on ready. So if I go to scale here, let's refresh the entire page. Okay, you can see here 0 to 5, and this is the queuing option at present. So I configure. Let's open up a metric as well as the log stream. With the metric, you can see how many counts has been scaled up and scaled down, which can be able to see. And with logging, you can see there will be some 2 function, a function 1, 2 which will be differ. I will show you how it actually happening, which is replica count, which is for the last half an hour. Let's set it. You can see from 0 it gone to 1, so by default now the time it's okay. So what I'm gonna do is, this is the logging, and I'm gonna push some message 1, message 1, keep on going to send message 1. You can see the message getting piled up here. And you can even have write some Python jobs to push some random messages for this kind of stuff. So what I will go is, I will just go here and check, refresh, and there was a scaling metric here. Let's refresh this. Sorry about that. Now I must send the messages actually. So it's getting started. So you can see the messages showing up here. You can see the function initiates with zeros and ones. Actually the message 1 will came up here, and all the message is done here. It will scale up to 0 to 1, depends upon the number of messages which we actually say. So the max scale which I have made is actually 2. So as this is a normal function, so it will be able to pile up from actually running the entire application in one node. If you are sending a job which is actually required to run on 3 to 4 minutes or 1 to 2 minutes, so that will pile up and show up a lot. Cutting thing, you can see the message 1 where this is the one message and this is the different message, and you can easily see all these messages has been showed up here with the job queue function of 0 and 1s, where it can queued and dequeued. You can see all the logs over here on respective to scaling and stuff. You can see how much the scale is actually happening, how much the replica is actually there, which is currently running on 1 replica. If I send a lot of messages, actually when it shows up, it will actually provide you a more scalable. I can push. This is a small case I am actually sending the message here. if we are sending a message more than 40, 50 and 100 messages, it will spike up like anything. You can see the messages are processing just like that. If you go here, if I refresh it, go to console logs, and there was only one container is consuming all the messages now, as it doesn't have sufficient time for the second one to pick up. If I put some timer here and on the job, if I put some timer and have some sleep time in Python over here, it will pick up the second job and third job on the second scaling purposes. Okay, so that wrap up the fourth step, which is setting up the scaling for the queue trigger. So this is how we have to trigger it and create the scaling option on it. So let's summarize that. The first step, what we done is we created a Python job in Azure function and pushed the queue trigger. So this is the Azure function, and this is the git. Let's open the GitHub. So push the code to GitHub and set up required stuff. I recently created. Okay, this is the code. I will push the Docker file also, which is been uncommitted. So I will push that Docker files, and I will push it. So first one is done. The second one, we Dockerize the app and push the container registry, which we use the you can see the commands in the readme file. This is how it need to develop, build, tag it and push it. So once it is pushed, it showed up on actually in our container registry, which showed up there. The third one, we created a container apps and deployed our job. Here you can see our jobs running. So the job is actually created it when we established and deployed it here. On the fourth one, we enable the scaling up option with this option scale. So where the scaling with queue storage was triggered with maximum, if we having more than 2 messages queue at the time, it will create a new replica and start processing the messages. So this is how it's actually happened. So which we done 4 different steps, and to complete the Python job to the container apps via manual deployment we have gone through it. On our next upcoming, we will try to deploy the same Python jobs and deploy via pipelines, which is the second step, third step, and we can be automated. That we will do a new video on it. So if you are still there, there was a tip for you. If you want to use your Azure, instead of actually I'm using my Azure account, if you want to use some temporary subscription, those kind of stuff, what I can recommend you to is, like, you can just go to the learn.microsoft.com and check for sandbox container apps. If you go to container apps over there, if I search it, you will get lot of courses here. If you go into develop somewhat discovery trainings, where you can have a learning paths and stuff, browse all the trainings. If you go inside it, type container app, so which is like managing and implementing container app, which is this stuff. If you go inside this exercise, okay, what they can provide you is, you can go with a free subscription, or else you can have an option to create a sandbox. You can able to create some easy sandbox for you to actually check it off. So if for the sandbox, just type sandbox Azure portal, where you can have Azure sandboxes there. Sandbox can be getting in on the on certain learning stage. You can, there will be options for click here and have a sandbox that can be get created. So I will post that link in the description, so you can just go with the sandbox and create this provision, these container apps and stuff, where you can just try deploying the code and having the pushing the code to actual stuff. I will push my code in the repository GitHub, and I will add the that repository URL on the description. Okay, and that's the end on the learning. Thank you. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification on so you won't miss out any new video. Until then, I'm Lakshman signing off.